remember I used to sneak up these stairs, and these stairs were double the length of the stairs that you had to sneak up. So it felt like a fucking hike in its own, and it was creakier. I remember doing that and then realizing my parents knew their parents.
Dude.
Let's start this thing, fool. Hello, I'm Sam.
And I'm Amelia.
Welcome back to Us Duo Podcast where we aim to build a better mindset for better relationships.
Yeah, and this week on relationships, that's disgusting. We are talking about meeting our significant others, families, and friends.
What the fuck? Nice. Yeah, so it's going to be an interesting throwback to previous memories.
Well, I only have a fair few. I think I'm keen to hear your stories.
Yes.
So let's start off with, were you ever nervous or scared to meet your significant others at the time, their parents?
You clearly were because your voice cracked there, buddy.
No, it didn't. I didn't even crack. What are you talking about?
Yeah, of course. Of course. It's always a daunting moment when you've got to meet your significant other's family, especially the parents. You know, I think it's just a number of feelings and thoughts that go through your head. She just farted, but that's okay.
I didn't fart. Girls don't fart.
Anyway, definitely it is a scary experience because, like I said, daunting moment where you've got to prepare yourself, especially if you've got stories or pre-warned by your partner that their parents are a bit cuckoo or
Tiger
maybe,
parent.
Yeah, a bit tigerish. So, of course, yes, definitely.
But then when it came to my parents, were you scared or were you not as nervous?
I think,
Did it change over time?
I feel like over
confident?
time, definitely. I think over time, I felt like it's just meeting random people, even though, yes, it is your parents. So obviously that feeling and that thought is running behind your mind when you're thinking about meeting them. But just like working and things like that, it's just like you're meeting someone.
Nice.
How about yourself? Like, were you ever like scared or ever thought about shit beforehand?
I think it was the same for both significant others' parents and also friends' parents, because my upbringing is like you always have to respect your elders, like the typical Asian stuff. Respect your elders, listen to them, don't like muck around and disrespect their home and all that kind of stuff. So I always had this expectation on myself to uphold that expectation and make sure that I meet it and that I'm like the goody two shoe. And in the end, it does work because all the friends' parents that met me, they usually really enjoy having me around. But then there's just so much pressure on me because I always have to be that perfect person.
Yeah, I can see what you're saying.
Rather than like, there is elements of me that I wanted to show, but I was always afraid to show. I was always like washing the dishes after I ate the snacks that they shared, or like always trying to help them like do something if you see them. And I'm like always just going that extra mile, bending my back to
bending your back backwards to sort of help them or to make a
and then that
image.
Became like the new bar that I've set for myself. And if I feel like if I didn't show that to anyone else's parents, it's like, oh, how come she's not helping me today? And they may not have thought that, but that's just my own thoughts. I was like, oh, maybe they won't see or think that I'm a good friend or a good partner.
Do you think that's a cultural thing that you've
definitely?
Yeah, because it definitely was for me, because I remember my parents used to be like, when you go over to your friends' places, always be respectful, always, don't be lazy, do things for them and just show that other side to them where you're not, I guess, putting that image like you're a piece of shit.
Yeah. Well, I wasn't told, like I was told that, but I also got in trouble a lot of times for not doing something. Like, it's not that I wasn't doing anything, it's that I didn't go the extra mile. Like, say, for example, I was sitting on the couch watching TV and I would have got yelled at for, say, the parents were doing something and I didn't help them, or I didn't go up and offer my help. Like, I got yelled at for doing that. Like, it wasn't often, but I did get yelled at for not doing it. So it's always ingrained in my mind. It's like in the corner of my eyes, my peripherals, I'm always alert to be like, oh, is someone doing something? I was like, okay, let's go offer my help.
So you didn't really differentiate the experiences between friends, parents, as opposed to your significant other
Not really,
parents?
because I feel like either way, there's an expectation to uphold.
Okay. For me, I felt like it was different. I felt like for your relationship, I definitely felt a little bit more nervous as opposed to your friendship.
Mm.
I think I felt that there was a clear definition between the two or a clear split between the two. Though when it came to meeting them, probably not as scared, but maybe I'm probably a little bit more reserved in the fact of not really talking so much.
Not swearing your head
Yeah, not
off.
swearing, maybe just not talking, just sort of sitting there and I don't know, being
Like,
respect.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
nodding, saying
yes.
yes, 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 yes.
Mm.
I noticed that, yeah, a big difference between friendships,
Mm.
parents, as opposed to like relationship
And it's also
parents.
hard because when I was younger, I never really went out to friends' houses or go on sleepovers or gone to anyone's house because I wasn't really allowed. So it was kind of hard. So I could only experience that really in high school. So I think that's what made it also a similar experience for me.
Yeah, so my upbringing in terms of schooling was a combination of female and male schools, but my high school was predominantly all males. Though that it didn't really change the experience being male or female, but because I was surrounded by Westerners majority of the time, it's of such a different dynamic being around Westerners, especially growing up, being around their family, how they treat their parents and how they communicate. It was such an eye opener for me, especially coming from that Asian background. I guess to reiterate, my parents were very much like, hey, when you go over to your friend's house, show the respect, like I was saying before. Just make sure you're clean, make sure you listen to them, don't be a dick around your friend's parents. And that's just a sign of respect. And that was the biggest thing that I always used to try and portray to my friends, like parents, and whenever I'm in their home. And yeah, and I think it was a bit skewed because all my friends, so the way that they talk to their parents was just so different to Asians in the way of how they talk. And what I mean by that is very much like my friends' parents would talk to them like as if they're friends, not like
Mm.
as if there's a clear definition of,
There's no
hey, yeah,
hierarchy,
there's no hierarchy.
organizational chart. Like
Yeah,
these are the parents and these are the kids.
yeah, that's right. And it was such a weird experience for me because I would see my friends talk to their parents like as if they're friends, and I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Or
But
even as simple as like not yelling at your parent, but they're like, "Hey, mom, have you seen blah blah blah?" If I did that, I'd be like, "Don't you ever raise your voice or like don't yell across the house. Don't be disrespectful." Whereas like you go to their house and like, "Oh, mom, I got blah, blah, blah," and you're like, they're so excited, and they're like, "Yeah, that's cool."
yeah, they have a
You
lot
know?
more expression, emotions when they talk. It's just so different for me, but I would always uphold that Asian expectation.
Mm.
So, like, yeah, all my friends' parents always used to give me feedback like, as if I'm such a respectful, studious person. But that was only because I was taught to be like that.
Yeah, and I think it's the same. Like the reason why I don't really have much story to share is because I was always just really quiet. I think it's one knowing that like I shouldn't be talking back, or I always just felt that hierarchy. It's the same as what my visions are. If I had like a CEO or boss, you don't really talk to them. Like they're a whole different level, and you only get to talk to them if it's like a privilege or if it's like a special moment or whatever it is. So it's like having a conversation with a parent or someone's parent was just foreign to me. I'm like, this is weird. Like, they won't want to talk to me, or I know they've got better things to do. And that's always what I thought. So I was just quiet. If they offered something, I would just say thank you. Or if they like did something, I'd just like help them. But I wouldn't make conversation because I'm like, I don't know if they want to talk to me and this is weird.
Yeah, that's right. And I think another thing I remember is addressing them by their last name. So you'd be like, oh, Mrs. Bennett, for an example, or Mr. Bennett.
Yeah.
And they used to be like, don't call me that, just call me my first name. And I'll be
That's
like, what?
so weird.
Yeah.
I
And
can't do
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah. I used to get really confused and it used to trip me out because, from an Asian perspective, you know how we say, oh, auntie or uncle,
Yeah.
or we address them by a formality
Well, it's just
perspective.
auntie and uncle, that's it.
Yeah. But when it comes to the Western side, it was just very much like, hey, just call me my first name.
That's so weird.
Yeah. I mean, it was an interesting experience and it really taught me how, like, especially my younger years, how to communicate with adults because they were very much just the dynamic was on such another level.
Mm. So going back into like meeting significant others' parents, What was your experience like meeting my parents? So, first of all, for those who don't know, my parents are separated. So, you had to meet them like separately. What were your, like, how did you feel before you had to meet them? And then what did you feel while you were meeting them?
Man, I like
I actually
I
don't even
don't even
remember how you met my mom. I know
I
how you
don't
met my
remember how I met
dad.
your mum, but actually, I think I met your mum before we even dated. I think maybe Guns Sunnybank Plaza or something like that. Like,
But like you still had to officially meet and be like, hey, this is my boyfriend.
yeah, I
I
don't even
think it was
remember
like over
that.
dinner or somewhere at a restaurant or
Yeah,
something.
I actually don't
Well, I
remember
guess it
meeting.
wasn't traumatic enough because you don't remember.
I don't remember. No, I think, like I said, there's always an element where I am a little bit nervous, but obviously, when it comes to the Asian perspective, you try to have those formalities and be respectful as possible. You do your best, right? When it came to meeting your dad, for sure, your dad's very, very traditional in effect of just being that typical Asian.
So, do you think you were more nervous before or more nervous after you met him?
I think I was probably more nervous at that moment.
Like, did he meet the expectations of what you thought he would be as a parent, or was he like scarier than you thought?
I'm a kind of guy who is worry at that kind of moment rather than thinking pre or post, oh, this is nervous or scary
Yeah, no.
or
So, was it scarier, or was it like kind of like this is what you kind of expected?
yeah, I feel like it was kind of what I was expecting. Just to meet a typical Asian dad that was traditional in a way. And I think it wasn't the first time meeting him wasn't just meeting him, it was meeting your grandma as well.
Oh, yeah, true. The
Yeah.
first time you met him was at
When you graduated.
graduation. Yeah.
Yeah. And then we had that dinner, lunch or dinner or something with your mum. Your mum was there too.
Really? Maybe that's when you met.
No, it was. I met your mum way before that, but yeah, your dad and your grandma.
And then I dropped my graduation hat over the
You
car
didn't
park.
drop it. You fucking threw it backwards.
And it flew off the balcony and fell downstairs into the car park.
Yeah, and your dad had to go and fucking fetch it.
Because you have to rent those hats. It's
And they're
not free.
expensive too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I forgot about that. I was thinking of another situation, which I'll talk about later.
Yeah. So what about yourself? What's your feelings, or how did you feel when you met my mum?
Mm,
I don't even remember when you first met my mum.
okay, there's a little story. I remember that you used to sneak me into your house, like before we met your mom, and you told me that your mom's a light sleeper and her room is just above the stairs. So we would like slowly like tiptoe, but these stairs are creaky. So I remember like I already had that expectation there where I'm like, okay, I can't wake her up. I don't want to look like I'm like a bad person sneaking into a house without permission. So those are the thoughts that I thought of beforehand. And then I think it's because I knew that I was like sneaking into your houses only a few times. And then eventually we actually met. And I think I wanted to uphold like a good expectation, like a good image for myself. So still showing that I'm like respectful and all that kind of stuff. And again, I think for a good like early few years, I was also really quiet, was scared to make conversation with your mom. And then like, I'm quite a sarcastic person, like, you know how I make, like, those sarcastic kind of responses or, like, jokes?
Yeah.
That's the things that I would always be scared to show, not just to your mom, but to anyone, and because they might be like, "Oh, well, that was a bit mean," or, like, "That was a bit rude." So I held back on that for a long time until I really opened up. But I think in general, your mom's nice, like, this wasn't really anything that's scary. Like, she's just really friendly.
So then, what were you nervous or scared at all, pre or post, or even during?
Not really. Like the same thing that I just mentioned is just knowing that we were sneaking into your house. So I just felt bad that, like, one, she might have already heard it. And she'd be like, oh, yeah, I know that you've been sneaking around in my house. And two, is just trying to make her know that, like, I'm still a good person if she did hear us sneaking around.
Right.
And I think the other thing was just knowing because, like, your dad's not around. So it's like meeting your sister and the family. That was a whole nother thing.
So do you think you're more nervous meeting my sister than my mum?
Yeah, I think so because it's like meeting a sibling that is kind of like a parent figure to you or like 9 years older than you. It just feels like it's another set of family that I got to meet, another parent that I had to meet essentially. And because from what I know, your sister looked after you quite a bit. So she would definitely not be like the tiger parent, but she will like watch over you quite closely. Whereas like I can see that your mom's quite lenient. So it's not that I was nervous, but it was just like anticipating like what would she think or like how's it gonna go.
Yeah, I think you met mum as she toned down. She was definitely a tiger mum in her earlier
Has
years.
she ever been a tiger parent to any of your past partners?
Probably
Not
my
tiger, but like maybe like
not
more
not tiger,
judging.
but definitely more judgy, more like keeping an eye on me. Because I remember like when I had my first girlfriend, my mum used to like be one of those Asian mums that like stick her head outside the window and they're like watching you, and then you can clearly see her head and her
Like
whole
the
body
Homer
watching me.
meme at
Yeah,
the window.
yeah, she was like one of those like for watching me as I leave the house and be like text me like when you coming home and shit like that.
Well, you haven't even left yet, and she asks
Yeah,
you when you're
pretty
coming
much. Yeah,
home.
my mum used to be pretty hectic, but
That's pretty funny.
yeah, she definitely toned down when you met her. Yeah, definitely toned down a lot.
Yeah, that's funny as. Wait, one extra level of question. So I have a stepmom. What was that like meeting her for the first time?
Trying to think back
When she came up
with
to
your sister. Hey,
Canberra, I think that was the first time you met her.
not Canberra. I
I
didn't meet
mean,
her.
when she came
Came
up to
up from.
Brisbane, yeah,
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Canberra.
I think that was the first time meeting her. I don't think I was nervous. I was probably more curious,
Mm,
knowing that she was your stepmom and what part she played in your life.
mm.
I was really curious to just see the dynamic behind it.
Yeah, and I think at that time, by the time she came up, we were already like what 5, 6 years together, like quite a long time. It wasn't like a
Yeah.
new relationship, so I think by that time, it's kind of like to see how it goes, kind of thing.
Yeah, no, we were definitely way above that 5, 6 years because we had the Yaris. And I remember driving him in the Yaris.
Really?
Yeah. And Yaris is such a piece, but yeah, no, that was definitely way beyond. We were like 7 years or something like
Wow,
that.
one
So we were
extra
pretty
year.
deep. We were pretty deep in the relationship. But yeah, definitely was not nervous, not scared. I was more curious to know
So
who.
how was it after you met her?
I thought it was interesting. It's like a different dynamic that she has. And I can see that she, I guess,
Was also just as curious.
yeah, she's just as curious as me. So after meeting your stepmom, I was more curious to meet your brothers and sisters.
Mm, yeah,
Yeah, and then obviously meeting them, I was like, oh, this is really cool.
had a lot of people to meet.
Yeah, like your family's massive. So yeah, I was actually pretty excited to meet them and actually meeting them for the first time, like your bro and your sisters and stuff like that, and actually talking to them. It was like just a different dynamic. And I guess from my perspective, my family's small, right? It's just me and my sister, and I don't really have any other family just here. So to be involved in your family and meeting them.
So do you have any other interesting stories from the past, like past relationships or like parent nightmares that you went through?
Um, I remember meeting my first girlfriend's dad. That was a bit daunting and scary. And I think that was
Why?
because I wasn't very confident in terms of me myself. So just meeting him, I was like, oh fuck, like meeting your girlfriend's like she's my first ever girlfriend kind of thing. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
it's just these emotions, these feelings, like you're scared, you know, like, oh, this guy's gonna judge me. Like definitely felt that.
Was she Asian?
She's half caste. So her dad was Aussie.
Oh, cool.
So it's totally different. Definitely was nervous. And I remember when my dad first met him too. And that was an interesting mix because I was like, oh shit, I wonder what my dad's gonna think. And I remember that moment when my dad was picking me up from her house.
How awkward when you're like dating someone and then your parent
Your
has to
parent has
pick
to
you
pick you
up.
up. Yeah, man. That was a bit of a weird one. Hey. It kind of felt like, you know how you go over your mate's house and
Yeah,
when you're a kid and your parents have to pick you up? It kind of felt like that. And I was like, fuck, this is embarrassing.
yeah.
But yeah, my dad, I remember like came over and picked me up and he said g'day. And
Your
my
dad
dad,
said good day.
yeah, dad was kind of like boganish,
Uh,
but in a fobby, I don't know, accent and everything. No, so that was actually like, I think at first I felt real like scared and nervous, but it was actually okay afterwards. But it was cool seeing like dad just kind of, say hello and just be chill about it. Just a bit awkward in the fact that he had to pick me up. I couldn't take my own ass home.
That's funny. But was meeting their parents, was it like not as daunting as you thought?
You can definitely feel the judgment. Yeah, like you know how they look up and down you and they try to understand like why the fuck does my daughter like you?
Well, there's probably like these are young kids, don't know what the hell they're gonna
Yeah, but
do.
well, man, if I had a daughter, I definitely would be thinking and feeling the same shit. But why the fuck does my daughter like this fucking dude? I'd be judging, I'd be trying to like suss him out.
Yeah.
So I definitely felt that. when I met them.
Well, I guess it's not judging, they're just trying to be cautious,
Of
like, be
course.
careful,
Yeah, of
obviously,
course.
when it's, like, the daughter as well.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, like, there's other stories. Like, I remember another story where I was very much like you, where I was sneaking around in the parents' home, and I actually never met the parents. And I remember sneaking up. I'd go over to her house, and she'd be like, "Oh, you have to sneak in," but my parents are light sleepers, and I had same situation as the thing that you went through as well. And I remember I used to sneak up these stairs, and these stairs were double the length of the stairs that you had to sneak up. So it felt like a fucking hike in its own, and it was creakier.
You're
Like it
doing,
was,
like, the Mission Impossible.
yeah,
Dun, 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 dun,
yeah. You have to
dun, dun.
dodge the lasers and shit like that.
On the-
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, like I remember doing that and then realizing my parents knew their parents, and that was a pretty
Dude.
big like oh shit
Wait, but how did you realize?
because
Like, on a separate occasion,
yeah, it
right?
was on a separate occasion when my dad passed away. Her parents were there, and I was like, oh fuck. And apparently they knew that I was dating their daughter. And I was like, how the fuck did they know? But anyway, the like a mysterious kind
Wait,
of
so you
story.
guys were still together, though, at that
I
time?
think we just broke up.
Oh. Awkward.
Yeah. Oh, actually, we broke up probably like afterwards, but still, like they knew
Hmm.
that I was sort of seeing their daughter.
Did you ever get caught
No,
sneaking into their house?
no, I never got caught, which was pretty good.
Nice. Mission complete.
Yeah, exactly right. Got the gold medal. But yeah, there was another story where I felt a lot more pressure meeting her father, and her father had a really high expectation in terms of like what I should be doing in terms of my career, my work, and things like that. Anyway, he wanted a doctor or like someone that was in medical.
So typical Asian
Yeah,
expectations.
like full traditional type of mentality.
Did he tell that to your face, or you
Yeah, yeah.
just
He
knew?
actually spoke to me. So when I first met him, the first thing he said was like, "Oh, what do you study?" At the time, I was studying, I think, marketing.
Dude,
Yeah.
marketing people earn quite a lot when you get up to the senior or head of marketing.
Well, at the
So
time, yeah, I didn't even know like marketing wasn't really big in Brisbane specifically. But I was studying marketing, and I think I was transitioning to IT. And pretty much it was just like, look, I want my daughter to be with someone who is either a doctor or pharmaceutical or an optometrist or something in health. And he's like, I don't think you're fit for my daughter because you won't be able to financially look after her.
the hell?
And I was like,
That's
what the fuck? Like in my head, I was like, oh shit, okay, this is a bit random. But then at the same time, I was like, what the fuck? And he said that in front of me as well as her. And even she was just like, what the hell? Like, why would you say that sort of shit? And I remember leaving that situation and that moment thinking, okay, well, right, if I don't tick the boxes for him, then we're fucked. Like, in theory, if this relationship went further, there's always going to be a disagreement because he didn't believe that financially I would be able to support.
but you can always change his mind.
Anyway, long story short, that was probably one of the worst experiences because, just having someone there to just be brutally honest in front of you.
But what did you guys say to him though?
Well, what else do you say? If someone asks you, hey, what do you study? What do you do for work? Oh, okay, this. Okay, great. But too bad. I don't think you're suitable because I want this. I want someone who is in this.
I would have just been like, just because you're not a doctor doesn't mean that you're not in a stable financial position.
Well,
I can still provide, I can still make your daughter happy.
that was just, I don't know. Like, I think after someone saying that to you, you kind of like stumped. You kind of like, okay, like, and you're trying to be respectful at the same time. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So yeah, left that situation kind of stumped. How about yourself? Have you been in those moments where you've
I can't
experienced
really
that?
share that many. The only parent I ever met that was like a significant other is yours. So no stories to share here. But in terms of that, other than that, there's friends as well. When you met my friends, were you like nervous or were you like just wondering if you can was it click with them or what were you thinking?
Like I said, I'm a more of a curious person. How do they talk? How do they communicate? How do they perceive things? Are they true to who they are? Being nervous? Nah, definitely not. And I think at that time, I already knew, I kind of had myself discovered in a fact of how I want my friendships and how I expected my friendships. So I think it was me being curious to know how your friendships are.
Yeah, and I think meeting friends is so much simpler because the parents, that's when the expectations come in and like all the respect and all the image that you have to uphold. Whereas friends, they're all the same age as you or similar and they don't expect that much from you. They're just like back then when you're like in your 20s, 18, you meet someone on the street and you're like, oh yeah, hey, let's just go hang, let's just go do this. So the expectation is quite low and
Yeah.
everyone's just happy to chill with everyone. So to me, it was just quite it was pretty simple. There wasn't really anything that I was afraid of. And also, me, I already knew some of your friends before we even got together. Like, I even hung out with some of your friends before too. So there wasn't really much that I had to like do, I guess. It's just coming out official, being like, okay, we are actually dating each other. That was the only thing.
Yeah, and I think you kind of felt there's the same thing because I met your friends or some of your friends well before we even dated.
And then getting past the, ooh, you know how like when you're like, oh yeah, we're dating, they're like,
Yeah, I think your friends were probably more curious
yeah.
when I first met
But
them.
it's just like getting past that. And then once it's past that, it's like, yeah, just friends.
Yeah, pretty much.
But one thought, the reason why this topic also was interesting to me is I've always thought to myself, in going back to that first thing I talked about, is that I couldn't be friends with, like, I couldn't be friendly with a parent, or I felt bad, or didn't want to like banter, like make that like funny, like those sarcastic remarks and stuff. And I was just thinking, I do this with friends or other people that may be a little bit older than me. And it's like, why do I have to limit myself and be afraid with people's parents? Because it's exactly the same thing like you do with other people. I shouldn't limit that because then it's actually not really me. Like I'm not being myself and they only see that good part of me, like just the cleaning and the helpful and just being quiet and respectful. So that was a like the biggest thought for the longest time. In the end, I realized there's no difference. Like it's still the same.
Yeah, that's right. And I think if I look back in the stories that I, met friends or, relationship parents, like I think really came back down to myself and how confident I was and I guess my feelings at the time of being in those situations.
Yeah, and I think in a bigger picture, in the end, when we're being like that, we're in a people pleasing mindset.
I think it's a combination. I think it's a combination of people pleasing, but also upholding the cultural expectations as well. Because well, for me, I was taught to be, hey, you have to do this, you have to do that, and
Yeah,
be
which
like
you're
this.
trying to please someone,
Yeah.
even if they're not physically there, you're trying to please that or like uphold that culture and you're trying to please that person who set that boundary, that set
Yeah.
that expectation.
Yeah. And I think it's just coming, like, I think later towards when it came to you, I was more like, okay, I understand myself a little bit more. I was a little bit more confident. Maybe I could talk a bit better. I could read the situation. I can understand certain scenarios in those moments. So it didn't really bother me as much and I didn't really think of it as much. So I just sort of more acted myself to some degree.
But coming off that as well, so my dad actually had comments about how you were. So you guys met up again. We had dinner with him, and this was like years after. So I think you met him at graduation. A few years after you met him in Hong Kong. Like we were staying at his place for a little bit, but he was always busy, so we never really hung out. And then to me, the most official meetup was when you had dinner with him over like at some restaurant. And then when we all finished, he messaged me and he was like, I don't like Sam because he didn't offer to pay the bills.
No, I didn't fight for the bill.
Yeah, you didn't fight for
Yeah.
the bill or you didn't offer to pay for the bill. So, what did you feel from hearing that?
Well, I mean, that's just a traditional thing, right? I mean, there's nothing much that I can really think about, to be honest, because normally I'm a person that would just pay for the bill normally. And I think with your dad's situation, it was a little bit different where he kind of just disappears from
Yeah, so
those.
he did a you.
He did a me where he just disappeared and then paid for it anyway. And it was a
Nah, I think it was actually the guy came over and he had the receipt and he's like, do you want to pay?
It was one of those yum cha ones where you got to walk off to the thing. I can't remember. Anyway, likewise, I think it was a bit of a, a weird one. But anyway, yeah. So long story short, I didn't pay for it, or I didn't fight for the bill. So then he basically didn't like me for that. That's such a traditional mindset, and I understand that if you're from a traditional Chinese background and you follow that quite closely, I can understand where the traditions is of that and the sign of respect is of that.
He wanted
But
some pushing and shoving.
yeah, I understand that, but that's not how we live in today's world, because some of those traditional mindsets or expectations is just such a wrong way of thinking. So I didn't really agree with it. I just thought, well, okay, your dad's tripping, but I can understand where he's coming from, because regardless, even if it's now, future, or bills will always get paid, regardless of how it is paid. You know what I mean?
No, what he said was like he doesn't mind that in the end if you didn't pay, he just wanted you to be like, "Oh no, don't worry, I'll pay," so that you kind of made that counter offer, so that he like, and I guess in the traditional mindset, it's like you actually at least offered to pay. It
It's
doesn't
the
matter,
attempt of
yeah,
it.
it
Yeah,
doesn't
yeah.
matter who pays in the end. It's just like you need to have to be like, oh, one person's like, oh, I'll pay for the bill. The other person has to be like, oh no, don't worry, let me have it. Like I'll have it, and then it has to be that.
Back and forth thing, nah, fuck that. I'm not that kind of person. If I'm paying for it, I'm fucking paying for it. And I'm not fucking around with that sort of shit. You know what I mean? So
Ain't
I ain't got
fucking
time
with
to
fine.
fucking. I ain't got time for that shit. All right, time is money. Time is fucking valuable. So I just, yeah, I don't
So funny.
know.
Anyway, so let's flip it. If we were parents, what type of parenting do you think you would be? Like, do you think you'd be the one that's kind of like your mom, where it's like looking out the window, making sure that like he's been good, or are you the one that's like, oh, whatever, like they're friends, like treat them as friends?
I think I'll be a combination. I'm a curious person, so I would love to. I like to be like, yeah, where you going, boy? Where you going, eh? And I like to instigate just for lols. So I think I'd be a fun kind of parent that would probably troll and give
So
shit,
you think?
and also be curious and like maybe be a little bit strict depending on what it is, right? So obviously there's a fact, or there's an element of me where I'm obviously trying to protect my kid, and I'll do things to, I wouldn't protect my child in a way where it's like, hey, don't let them experience it. I think experiencing it is important, and them making the mistake for them to learn is a big thing, right? But
Do you think you change the way that you would parent them, or like accept their partner or significant other if it was a daughter versus a son?
I definitely think that if there's a daughter and a son, it would be a little bit different. I think with the boy,
I can just
yeah.
imagine you with the son, yeah, boy, go get it. And then the daughter, you'll be like, you better come back at 8 o'clock.
I don't know if I'll be that strict with the daughter, but I definitely be more cautious because I know what boys are like.
Who's this boy?
Yeah, they're
What
all,
does he do? Where is he
guys
at?
just, young blokes, they just want one thing, all right? And I know that. So I think I'd probably be a little bit more protective of the daughter, but I still would want her to go and do her thing. Like, her choice is her choice. But at the end of the day, as long as she doesn't get fucking fucked up from it, that's the most important thing for me.
Nice.
What about you, buddy?
What a cool parent you
I'm a
are.
fucking cool dude, all right?
Nah, I think I'm kind of the same. I think I would lean a little bit more on the stricter side, but I wouldn't say I'm completely strict where I'm like a tiger mom. Again, like just more cautious and just wanting to know. But it's also, I think the thing that I would add that's different is just be like letting her or him know. It's like in the end, if there's any issues, just let us know. Like you don't need to hide it from us. Because you know how like well, for me, when I was a kid, I'd be so afraid to tell anything to my parents. Like, I wouldn't open up, I wouldn't say anything. So I think the thing that I would do different is just like if there's anything issue, like say for example you went on that date and it didn't go so well, it's fine, call us, we'll pick you up. Like don't be scared thinking that you have to stay there and, go through it alone.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing would probably be like the communication. I think me growing up and being around like my Western friends, that was the biggest eye opener for me, was seeing the differences between how Western parents would communicate and treat their kids as opposed to like Asian parents.
Yeah, and I would want them to feel like we're their friends. So, what I'm like, my thought process now is that because of that hierarchy, that organizational sort of feeling between parents that I had, like the parenting style that I had to go through, when they oppose to something, like say they really don't agree with the guy that you're going out with, or they really don't agree with what you're doing, then you become very defending of whatever they say. Whereas, like, if you're like a friend and you've earned their trust and they trust what you're saying and your advice, even if you oppose, like, obviously with respect, being like, I don't think that he's the right person for you or she's the right person for you because of blah 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 blah, they're more open to actually listen to you and listen to your advice and actually think about it. Whereas if you're like, no, you've got to listen to me, I'm your mum, blah 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 blah, then they're like, no, I'm gonna stay with him, and then they may have, they can learn from their mistakes, but you obviously don't want them to go through that
Yeah, I mean, we're not experts. We don't know any of this stuff.
until it happens. But I'm
But
just saying, like, I
yeah,
would like to be more on that friend side than like a hierarchy chart sort of parenting style.
yeah, I agree. It's such a big difference. And I think, yeah, sure, there is a level of hierarchy and there's still that respect. I think ultimately I would like my kid to still respect me for being like a dad,
Yeah, obviously.
but I still want them to be open to be like, hey, dad, I've got this going on, or hey, what do you think of this? Or,
Mm.
you know what I mean? Like that open communication. I think that's really important.
Yeah, and then I think I don't want to be the scary kind of parent. So if they did invite someone over, I wouldn't be like, like, like
Well, you'd
looking
be
at them.
like,
I'd be
who's
like, hey,
this?
come in, like,
Yeah.
come eat dinner with us or something like that. I don't want to be like, obviously, internally, we may be like judging, just making sure that they are a good person, but still, you want to be inviting.
Yeah. I think they're good memories and good stories. And I think ultimately how we apply that to our kids, I think,
We'll see.
yeah, we'll have to see.
So let us know if the many times that you had to meet someone else's or your significant other's parents, was it scary? Was it fun? Was it cool? I don't know. Let us know what it was like.
Yeah, let us know in the comments and the DMs, guys. But once again, thank you for joining us, and we will see you in the next one.
Goodbye.
Peace.